Hi, Petra. Thank you so much for joining the UK AI Women in AI podcast today. I would love for you to introduce yourself to all the people watching and listening.
Hi, Zara. Thanks for having me. My name is Petra Abbam, and I currently work at the BBC, working in responsible AI, leading on engagement. And I'm basically working with teams to help them understand how to embed sort of the principles of responsible AI and to create a culture where people think responsibly, sort of by default, as they use AI. I'm somebody that's done many things throughout my career, and I'd love to spend some time telling you a few of the things, some of the lessons I've learned, some of the things that I've experienced, and what's led me to where I am today.
That would be wonderfully educational and inspiring for our listeners. What made you choose the career path that you're on now?
It's an interesting question. I would say I was definitely somebody that I always said I never changed jobs, I changed careers.
Mhm.
And I've been a software designer in investment banking, designing trading systems. I was in ad sales and car magazines. I ran sport websites. I've run a romance bookstore in Australia. I've been in medical publishing. I've done many things. And I would say one thing that always drove me, I always said to everyone, what drives me is curiosity. I'm a really curious person. I love to learn. I love to understand. I love to know what's going on. And and then I came to the BBC. And in the BBC, I think the great thing about this organization is that there's so many opportunities. And I came in, I was running the publishing for the Proms and Orchestras and Choirs. And then after a while, I basically was like, Proms is amazing, but what else is out there? And at that point, I didn't really know what I wanted, but I knew that I wanted to have more influence. And then I got sponsored by to do a fellowship for leaders in the arts, the CLOR Leadership Fellowship, and that was amazing. I think that really kind of made me understand myself in ways I'd never really thought about. Like for me, I'd always thought that everything I did was around curiosity, that I was like, I need to be interested in something. That's what drives me. Whereas actually doing that, you spent a year sort of understanding who you are as a leader, and you also got to sort of explore any type of leadership that you wanted. And for me, what I realized that I was really interested in was social justice, but
Mhm.
also technology. I did computer science at university. I've always had some technical aspect to all of my jobs. I love technology. I love the digital space, the digital sphere. And so that's always sort of kept me, that's always something that I've always tried to embed in my work, even no matter how little there seemed to be technology involved in it. And yeah, social justice was something that I always felt very strongly about. I used to say that I love Scrappy Doo. Scrappy Doo was my childhood hero because I was like he was so misunderstood, and I always like the edge cases and supporting the underdogs. So yeah, that's why I kind of like Scrappy Doo. And so that year of the fellowship really made me understand that actually technology and social justice is what matters to me. And so I ended up exploring what does equality and fairness look like in a digital society, and that was really interesting. I ended up doing that year, I ended up doing a placement at a think tank looking at sort of the unintended consequences of technology. I was exploring algorithmic bias. This was like about 8 or 9 years ago. I was exploring algorithmic bias. I was exploring all of these things. Like I went to academia, I was going to industry as social science, and I was speaking to all these people, technologists, and it was absolutely fascinating to me, all the stuff that was happening. Like we were using things like Facebook and Google and stuff without any sort of understanding about what was going on under the hood. And so when I came back after this year, I was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. I was geared up. And it was also great because it also brought me back into that whole technology space in like a much deeper way. But then when I came back, there weren't really many avenues in the BBC at the time. So I think that was a bit of a setback for me. And it was trying to, how do I make this happen without really knowing how to make it happen? And yeah, and then I went, what ended up happening was I ended up doing other roles at the BBC and sort of getting sort of other really valuable experience. And then eventually I realized I couldn't not do this anymore. And I went and spoke to one of the senior leaders at the BBC, and I said, look, I really want to get back into technology, and this is what I'm really passionate about. And they were like, well, we're just about to build a team. So it was like the timing, but also because I'd had that background that year that I did, and because I'd always kept an interest, I was also prepared to take the opportunity when it arose. And so that was how I got back into it. And this was like 3 years ago. So I've been working in sort of responsible AI at the BBC for the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. And I would say one thing that I've always thought was like, just because something doesn't work out, don't think that that's the end. You know, keep trying. You know, don't, if, you know, if things, I think things, if you keep pushing, perseverance goes a long way.
Yes, definitely. That's very good advice. So, I mean, you've sort of described some of your internal challenges where you were pulled towards your passion. Is there something that you particularly would like to share and how you overcame it? Because that really inspires people if they're going through something similar.
Um, it's quite interesting. I've just been there's a writer called David Epstein, and he wrote this book called Range, which is kind of pretty much my Bible. And it's basically all about how generalists thrive in a world of specialists. And it sort of looks at, you know, a lot of people like society kind of rewards the generalists and sort of says you should specialize, you should be this, you should be that. And I think for many years I was always just like, oh, I feel a bit flighty because I keep changing my career. I keep changing all these different things. I'm learning all these different skills. I'm a bit of a jack of all trades and master of none. And I would always be really but I still really excited about it. But always, you know, but when I'd go out to look for jobs and stuff, they would all be like, oh, but you don't have experience in this field. You don't have experience in that field. Or why do you keep changing fields all the time? So, but this book really made me sort of understand that actually that's what I am. I'm a generalist. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. It gives me all these sort of transferable skills. I've got like diversity of experience. I've got insights that other people don't necessarily have because they haven't worked in so many different industries. And then I was I recently read an interview with him, and this professor at Johns Hopkins University, Bill Gurley, who's written this new book, Running Down a Dream, How to Thrive in a Career You Actually Love. And that, again, is really interesting. And it was basically about how people should do what they love, and that so many people don't do that. And I remember when I was younger, I got made redundant. And so I went traveling around the world. I took the money and went traveling around the world for about a year. And it was just really interesting. And I came back, and I realized until that point, I think I'd only ever really gone into jobs, even though I was driven by curiosity. It was kind of curiosity. It wasn't like, it was the unknown what was pushing me. I was like, oh, I haven't done that before. Let me try that out. Or I haven't done that before. Let me try that out. Whereas when I came back from traveling, I was kind of like, actually, I've seen what, you know, people do. I said to myself, I'm never going to do a job just for the money. It needs to be something I believe in, not just that I'm curious about, but something I really believe in and think is kind of worthwhile. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's kind of what's always sort of kept me, that's kind of always been like my North Star ever since. And I would say to people, you know, it's like, find something you believe in. I mean, it doesn't need to be like the whole thing. There could just be one aspect. It could be the people in the organization. It could be, it's going to give you some knowledge that you're not going to get anywhere else. You know, I feel like any industry, any role that you have, you never, even if you don't enjoy it or something goes wrong, I think you always get something out of it. You always learn something about yourself by any experience that you have.
Very true. If you have a positive mindset and a growth mindset, you learn from even your mistakes. In fact, especially from your mistakes. But one thing people sometimes are nervous about Is, for some people, it can take some time to find their true passion or their true calling in their life. Sometimes it takes time. What would be your advice to people who want to kind of pursue a similar path to you?
So I would say, for one thing, I would say I'm not sure I've ever found my true calling, you know. So for me, it's like I see I I feel like we have a long life, and for me, I think these are all just stages on it. You know, I'm really interested in responsible AI. I think it's great. I love what I'm doing, but I'm not necessarily sure that that's where I'm going to be in like 3, 5, 6, 7 years. And so it's like, I don't think we need callings in a way that we necessarily needed in like previous generations. And I would say, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to change, to pivot. Don't be afraid to not know what the next 5 years look like. That's one of the questions I hate the most when people say to me, what's your 5 year plan? And I'm just like, do I even have a 5 month plan? And but yeah, so for me, it's like try things. You know, don't set yourself on one single course. You know, some our parents did and stuff like that. But again, you know, people retired earlier. They had less options. You know, it was, whereas now we've got portfolio careers. You've got young people that are doing 3, 4, 5 sort of side hustles and things like that. It's like, you know, the more that the more variety you have, the more sort of diversity of thinking you have, the more that you can adapt to different scenarios, different situations, the more you can speak to different types of people, the more you can empathize with what with people, you know. So all of these diverse experiences are really powerful. And so I would say, don't, if you have something that you're passionate about from an early age and are like, this is what I'm set on, great. But
Hmm.
that doesn't necessarily, but if you don't, also great. That gives you time, that gives you opportunity to explore. And that I've gone into things where, you know, even though and something has occurred, something has arisen just because of this sort of side move that I've done. I would say my career, there's something that called squiggly careers, and my career has basically been totally squiggly. I've gone sideways, I've gone backwards, I've gone up, I've gone left, I've gone right. And yeah, it's great. You know, that's what's brought me to today.
And it's probably allowed you to connect, as you said, the different, ideas from different sectors, and it gives you a completely creative or a fresh way of looking at problems because you bring solutions from different sectors into another sector, another field. You
Yeah,
connect the dots along the way. You're very true. And it prevents sort of, thinking within a box
yeah,
or kind of following, the herd kind of mentality.
yeah. Because I feel like I definitely think I feel like I'm fairly open-minded about things, because I've just worked in so many different sort of types of organizations, so many different industries, and so I think an open mind is so important. Yeah, when you're working.
Hmm. And what do you find most fulfilling about your current role?
Mm, I love learning.
Hmm.
I definitely love learning. So for me, I would say learning, but also grappling with all these knotty problems about what is our position in this space, what is our position in that, what does responsible use of AI actually look like in practice? You know, so having to think through that kind of those sort of more sort of ethical conundrums and things like that. I find that really interesting.
Hmm.
And I would say the thing that I've noticed, you know, when I look back at my career, and I think a friend pointed this out to me, she was basically like, actually, you know, when you say that all of your thing, everything you do is so different, it's not actually that different. She goes, and I realized that it was all of everything I do is either about storytelling or about systems. Like I'm really interested in how things work and and stories. Like one of my favorite thing in the world to do is read. I love reading. I've always loved reading. I love stories. I used to read the back of cereal packets. I used to read encyclopedias. I love understanding how things work. I used to take, like, when I was a kid, my mom would give me watches and I would take them apart and put them back together. So it's kind of those two things, like systems, how things work, and storytelling, kind of they followed me throughout all of my careers. And like my current role is perfect. It's basically about sort of understanding how people are, like the stories people are using to use people's stories and using AI, and how the system in using AI actually works.
Hmm. Yes, it definitely demonstrates that you brought those two interests and passions together. Are there any kind of current projects or future projects that you'd like to share that you're currently involved in?
Um, I'd say there's quite a lot going on. I think the BBC is like heavily exploring what's happening in this field, and like where AI, like what how AI can add value to the organization. I'd say a couple of things that we're sort of really sort of working on is like improving the sort of understanding, the skills, that sort of understanding of what AI is. I'd say, I find that it's really interesting in that so many people, like we keep throwing around AI like as this buzzword. And actually, when we're saying AI, for a lot of people, we don't actually mean AI at the moment. We mean specifically generative AI is what's sort of seen this whole massive sort of upsurge in interest and uses and stuff. So it's helping with that literacy piece, and sort of what skills do people need to be at that sort of base level of understanding, and yeah, and also kind of what can we do to help people make decisions more broadly about when to use AI, when not to, and what does it mean for them. So yeah, there's quite a lot of work going on, and yeah,
Hmm. And
it's an exciting space.
what legacy would you like to leave behind?
I would, for me, I think for me, my legacy is I'm always passionate about people understanding what opportunities there are for themselves, like what the options are, like understanding what's possible, that not being limited in one thing, whatever I can do to sort of help sort of broaden people's perspective, give them support, the tools that they need to sort of see what's going on around them. I think that's for me what kind of is what I'd like to be my legacy, to be like somebody that's helped systems, people kind of seize the opportunities that are out there for them.
Wonderful. How can people get in touch with you, Petra?
You can reach me on LinkedIn. I think I pretty much guarantee I'm the only person in the world with my name, so I'm very easy to find. I take pride in that. But yeah, so you can get me on LinkedIn.
That's great. And is there anything else you'd like to share with people watching and listening?
I would say just because other people might not be walking the same path that you do and don't necessarily understand the path that you're on doesn't mean it's not valid.
Mhm.
It doesn't need to make sense to anyone else apart from yourself. And even if it doesn't necessarily make sense to yourself, you never know, you may have a eureka moment. Seize your opportunities, go for it, try it. I'd say for responsible AI, if you want to get into this space, into responsible AI, I'd say there is no one way to do it. I think responsible AI is sort of understanding the sort of implications of AI use. And so for that, that needs people from all types of industry, all types of roles, all walks of life, whether you're academic, whether you're a technologist, whether you're in marketing, whether you're in social science, whether you're in communications, whether you're in governance, it's whether you're in editorial, anything. It's kind of everyone. This is it's an exciting space, and we're looking. I think if it's something you're interested in, just reach out, take a look at what's out there, and sometimes places might not have anything. It's also like a growing space. So some organizations, some spaces might not have anything to do with responsible AI. So look where the gaps are, and you can build something for yourself.
Petra, it's been so enjoyable speaking to you. I really learned from your passion. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.